Warren, what do you consider the most important quality for an investment manager?
It's a temperamental quality, not an intellectual quality. You don't need tons of IQ in this business.
When the stock is up 30% in a month,
You do not have to be able to play three-dimensional chess.
don't feel 30% smarter.
Penny stocks. They're penny stocks for a reason.
Because when the stock is down 30% in a
I
month,
always say Tesla's a tech company.
it's not going to feel so good to feel 30% dumber.
You're not right or wrong because 1,000 people agree with you. And you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people disagree with you. You're right because your facts and your reasoning are right.
What's up, everyone? This is Alan from Cruising Altitude. I'm joined by Ryan, Mr. Money himself. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You look to be in a good mood tonight. I love that.
I'm in a great mood.
Yeah,
I'm in a great mood. I'm wearing my Baylor shirt. Baylor is going deep in the March Madness tournament. Nothing could be better.
Yeah. Did you go to Baylor?
I did go to Baylor. Yeah, I probably should have led with that.
No, it's all good, man. We know if you were like a bandwagoner, you know. Maybe.
Not at all. Not at all. And our women are going to the Sweet 16 as well. So hopefully, I'm hoping we could be the first team to have the men and women win. That's my goal. And Maryland, your current school had a big win. Is that right?
For sure. We had a big win. Last night was not too pretty, but the cool thing with me, since I'm from Cleveland, I have multiple teams in this. My friends actually make fun of me for this, but we got Maryland because of where I go to school. Ohio State did not go well. Ohio Bobcats, Cleveland State. We are all out now. So I had 4 teams going into this, but 4 teams that lost, and you got one, and you're still in it. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah, no, it's just barely hanging on by a thread. I swear, like the games are just half nerves and half excitement.
College games are so fun to watch. Like I hadn't watched any game until last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago now, with all the tournaments and conference play, and it was just unreal. I think it's exactly what I needed as a fan, and it's just been really exciting to see that raw emotion from the college athletes again.
Absolutely. I saw the CEO of Penn National Gaming on this morning on the Squawk Box talking about how they blew past their Super Bowl numbers this year. Really good to see for them. But that's not what we're talking about today.
We're not. I feel like everyone wants to hear about Penn National, no?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just do a quick audible and do a Barstool podcast right now.
Yeah,
and I want all the viewership to know that we were retweeted by the Barstool CEO.
We're pretty humble here at Cruising Altitude, right? It's not like we have a portfolio that's up 52%, outperforming the S&P 500 by about 20-25% over the past 4 months since we got started. We're humble here, right? But we did get retweeted by Erica Nardini, Barstool Sports CEO. Not Dave Portnoy, is not the CEO. That was very cool. It was crazy. So our Twitter isn't big yet for anyone that doesn't know. It will be one day. But when we see 30 likes on a Cruising Altitude post, might be a big CEO that retweeted us. That might be the reasoning. Yeah, so Penn National Gaming is a $18 billion market cap, currently trading at $113 a share. I'm kidding. That's not the focus today, guys. Today we're going to be, but for those that don't know, Penn National Gaming is a portfolio pick of ours, and hopefully we look forward to doing a podcast one day focused on them. But today we are going to be focused on a company that we are writing about in our newsletter this week that drops every Thursday at 12:30 that you can find at cruisingaltitude.substack.com. But this week we will be focusing on a company called Brainsway. So before this, Ryan and I decided that I'll be doing more of the background of Brainsway. Ryan would focus on more of the financials. I might switch it up on him and have him do, but I'm not kidding, man. We're going to keep it nice and chill. And you ready to jump right in, Ryan?
I'm ready.
Great. So one thing we really enjoy doing at Cruising Altitude starting at the top. One thing that ARK Invest does that's phenomenal is they really look at the bigger trends that are happening in society and in this world. Where's there going to be the greatest innovation and the greatest growth? And we at Cruising Altitude, of course, like all investors, like to borrow and learn from everyone else. And when we are looking at possible investment opportunities, are thinking about where is the greatest thematic growth. And one area where there is explosive thematic growth is mental health and greater medical arena, but specifically mental health. And there's two big catalysts there, right? One is something great that mental health awareness is becoming more mainstream, and the people are getting the care they either want or need, but also on the other end, and the demand for that has never been higher, whether it's obviously the impact that COVID has had, or just social media, technology, not the best stuff for the brain. So there's going to be a lot of growth happening there. We have one portfolio pick called Talkspace, which is a SPAC that went public. That is an interesting company that we already did a piece on in the past, but now we want to share Brainsway. And before I go any further, we don't know if this is going to be a portfolio pick, right, Ryan? I think we're going to decide at the end of this.
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, maybe we do, maybe we don't. So, and that's kind of how it's been at the outset. When Alan brought this to me, I kind of looked it over, and I am healthily skeptical. So that's pretty much where I sit right now after looking over the numbers. I'm excited. I haven't had too much of a chance to go through the investor presentation, so I'm excited to hear more about the story. But I'm in total as a massive market for these kind of therapies, and it serves a good purpose in the world. Obviously, these things need to be brought to the market's attention to help people and make people's lives better, especially after such a horrible pandemic that we've gone through. So,
right. For sure. And I'm, unlike Ryan, going to be a little bit more non-biased. I'm not going to tell you how I feel till the end. But why don't we jump right into it? So Brainsway is a company that specializes in something called deep TMS, which stands for transcranial magnetic stimulation. Okay, sounds interesting, right? Basically, what deep TMS is Brainsway is a medical device company that makes the device that does deep TMS. What is deep TMS? Kind of what you can do is think about putting a football helmet on, right? And the device will target certain areas of the brain that are either not functioning properly to create a homeostasis, a little bit of an equilibrium in the mind, a balance of neurotransmitters, a lot of science stuff that we don't really mess with. But what we do know is it's a very cool technology that helps people suffering from very serious disorders by focusing on increasing stimulation in certain areas of the brain. So Brainsway currently has 3 FDA-approved treatments for different disorders, all using the Brainsway helmet. There's actually 2 of them on one machine, but let's think about just one for now. The 3 different disorders that it treats or difficulties are major depressive disorder, OCD, and smoking cessation, okay? AKA people that are trying to quit smoking. And Brian, before I go any further, how did the non-scientific, scientific explanation go?
That makes sense to me. And I kind of looked up a little bit of the history of TMS. So it's not new technology. The TMS first device was introduced in 1985. And that technology was enabled by a guy named Michael Faraday, who in 1881 made the first magnetic field by running electricity through a coil. So in case you needed a nostalgic flashback to your middle school science teacher lecture, that's how we got here today. And that's
awesome.
what we're
Ryan, can I tell you why you're great, man? I didn't tell you to look any of that up. You know, it's just your passion, man. You love knowing the history behind Brainsway and DTMS and things like that. But kind of going off course for a second, I was a little bit skeptical when I first looked at Brainsway, right? Just the idea of putting a helmet with a coil on your mind. Brain, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that, I've kind of, and we can get to my whole rundown of my thesis later on. But one of the very insignificant points is that it does look ridiculous. There's not.
It looks cool. I might have a bad sense of style.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a sexy way to put on a helmet and be cured of your ailments. But I think, the science has shown that it works, but it's not the grooviest looking thing, if you will.
And there's nothing wrong with that playing into the thesis, right?
Not at all.
Right, 100%. So I want to go through some of the data that Brainsway has shared because it's really powerful. So let's start with depression. So first, there's kind of 3 different categories of depression patients, okay? There's 16 million nationwide that are thought to suffer from clinical depression, a really sad number. 9 million of those do not respond to a first round of treatment, whether it be medicine or more talking therapy, and 6 million of those, so what is that, about a third, do not respond to any treatment at all, which is really sad and crazy. Check this out. So after 6 weeks, if you used the Brainsway system, 72% of depression patients that saw no response, they're part of that 6 million that saw no treatment working for them, saw an improvement of symptoms. 72% that had a prior no luck with classical depression treatments. 48% of them entered statistical remission. Those are crazy numbers. And I think on behalf of, and of course, there's no systemic side effects. And there's all the FDA trials, approvals, that there's nothing, we're not missing anything. And I think it's very fascinating as a society that this is not as well known, if this is such a powerful technology. And then just to keep running through, OCD, we had after 6 weeks, 58% of patients saw a significant decrease in symptoms. And then as well, smoking cessation. I do not have the number right in front of me, but here it is. I think 28% of patients saw symptomatic relief versus 12% in the placebo there. So that's very strong statistical data. Ryan, what do you think when you hear all of that?
Well, I don't know anything about medical trials. And that's, obviously another part of my ultimate thesis is that I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm not a scientist.
1 second, and that is okay, right? That especially these days, everyone's saying, you've got to check out this stock, that stock. Stay in your lane. Investing is something personal. Yeah, we're talking about it much more commonly and casually, but invest in what you know. And this, a little bit of a spoiler, I know a little about medical devices and FDA trials and phases and all that, because I've been reading about them for a few years. But part of the issue, and we'll get into this, is competitors and analyzing why Brainsway is different. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I think you bring up a good point. Warren Buffett, one of his biggest quotes is that if you don't understand the business, you have no business investing in it. And for me, I really try to live by that. So when I start reading about coils and nerve stimulation in the brain, I start to get trepidatious and say, all right, this is out of my league. Let me leave this to the experts. But I think, the numbers are very promising. And it sounds like a good product.
100%. And before we go further, a little bit of a personal story here. I not think I bring this up, but we have mentioned competitors. There's about 5 or 6 companies that look like they're doing DPMS in the United States. One of them is called STIM is the stock symbol. Neurostar is the product. Neuronetics is the company. There you go, Brain. Maybe I could have used some DPMS there, but basically they are doing about, I think, 51 million in revenue. We'll have you do the numbers for Brainsway, but Neuronetics did 51 million in revenue, while Brainsway did about 20 this past year, so it's a little bit bigger. They have more systems nationwide, but the reason why I'm into Brainsway is I almost hit a grand slam with Neuronetics. I was in at $1 a share. Do you know what it's at now?
Tell me.
About $14 a share. And part of this was all going on during COVID and things like that. And part of the inspiration to cruising altitude was missing out on that Neuronetics opportunity, right? Here's a company that I saw as a fantastic opportunity, but I wasn't thinking long-term. I'm human too, right? And you are too. We can get influenced by the noise and want that immediate feedback, but knowing I could have 14x'd my money is a little bit tough. So that's kind of how I got into this originally. That was a little bit of a fascinating experience. I don't know if you have a follow-up question for me with that.
No, but I have several stories like that where it's horrible. I mean, you look back and you're like, yeah, I could have tripled 10 times my money. And what do you do with those kind of feelings? I mean, those are not easy feelings to deal with, as even my, small amount of investing that I do. What do you do with those feelings?
I think I beat myself up about it for as long as I can. No, I'm kidding. I think it is so important to be good to yourself, right? I think so many of us are in the first inning of our investing careers, being 20, 30, 15, even whatever age you are. You could still view yourself as investing forever. Warren Buffett still looks at opportunities through a lens of forever, right? So I was down on it a little bit for a couple months, but then I think about what can I learn from this? We had a podcast a couple months ago with Brian Feroldi of The Motley Fool. He has a investor journal where he writes notes and learns lessons from his experiences. I do not do that because I don't like writing. It'd probably be good for me if I did, but that's something that anyone can do. Is Neuronetics. I liked it. I was with it. Just buy and hold and stick with it if you believe in a company, and of course the fundamentals and the research are there. But I think the biggest thing for me being 23 years old is saying it's okay. Hopefully my greatest investing days are still ahead of me, and I'm going to have that experience and power future investments of mine. How's that for an answer?
Yeah, I like it. And I do a similar exercise in my head. It's like, you can't get them all, you
shouldn't want to get them all. That's part of the problem. I'm on financial Twitter all day. Follow me at Alan Sokoloff, or at CA30K for Cruising Altitude. Everyone has the next opportunity, right? And have your stocks, stick with your stocks. Yeah, be open-minded, but you don't have to own them all, and you shouldn't own them all.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's tough when I do the DD on a stock and I believe in it, but I'm like, oh, like maybe it goes down 10 more cents, 20 more, depending how expensive it is. And then, it 5 times, especially during this market in 2020, that was something I saw a couple times.
Ryan, either you lied to me or you're lying to our viewers, because you said you love a good stable dividend producing stock. Those guys aren't moving up 5 times. Don't mess with me.
I will tell you the ticker. It was a blockchain, a Bitcoin mining company on the blockchain at $3. And at $3, I said, it's too expensive. I want it to be $2.75. it touched 90 the other day. Like it's it's one of those things. Like I couldn't have predicted a Bitcoin run up like we saw, but
Right.
what are you gonna do?
I think one of you're smart, right? You didn't tell me that you like the blockchain stock Bitcoin because I probably wouldn't have hired you, right? But I think that, of course, that's a much longer, different conversation. But I'm still a little bit skeptical of Bitcoin. I think that's okay. But how do you process something like that? Did you beat yourself up about it? What's your kind of spin on that?
I try to laugh about it as much as I can.
Good.
Because I think people are way too serious, especially about investing. Like I know it's money, and maybe it's because it's my last name, but at the end of the day, like if I'm up at all, like I'm okay. Like I'm gonna be okay. And I think that, you can just get in this narrow frame of mind where it's like if I'm not up like everyone else on FinTwit, which, the posts are just crazy. It's like going on Wall Street Bets and seeing somebody's up 600% and being like, well, if I'm not up 600%, that it's and you can make a broad generalization about social media like that being like that way in general. But it's tough for me to. So when stuff like that happens, I find it useful to tune out, not only tune out, but just put my phone away and
There it
like
is.
give myself some time.
I think that's kind of a rule for life for people our age, right? Put your phone away for a few minutes, and you'll get back in your zone. I was joking with my dad watching some March Madness with him, where obviously I got every pick wrong in the tournament, right? And I'm pissed, and I'm like, I just changed the channel, turned off my phone, changed the channel, and I start moving on. And I couldn't do that growing up, but now when I'm older and got a little bit more perspective, I think that's something very powerful that beating yourself up about March Madness isn't going to get you anywhere, and probably beating yourself up about that stock that you missed and actually getting more comfortable with that feeling of missing an opportunity, I think will ultimately lead you to becoming a better investor in the long run. Let's keep rocking and rolling. But I mentioned Neuronetics. Neuronetics is also approved to do depression and OCD for DTMS in the United States, but not smoking cessation, which is awesome that Brainsway has this opportunity kind of in front of them. But the biggest thing, and kind of similar to what we were saying earlier, is awareness. Here we have this fantastic, amazing product, but what sales are we doing to try and get this? What marketing are we doing to try to get this well known? But before I go any further, why don't you give a brief overview about the financial state of the company? And I'll specifically ask you to start with the stock price and market cap.
Well, you honestly caught me off guard there.
So you guys, I'm very demanding. So the stock price is about $8 and something, and the market cap's a little over $100 million, correct?
Yes, the stock price is $8.50.
Awesome, sweet. So, and then do you know what the market cap is?
It doesn't say. I'm gonna have to take your word for it.
I got it. I'll check it out for you. So why don't you give an overview of the financial situation?
Yeah. So the latest that we have is Q3 of 2020 versus Q3 2019. We have revenues in 9 months ended Q3 2020. Revenues of 14 million, gross profit of 11 million, and you're looking at a net loss of almost 5 million. And then if you go back to year-end 2019 numbers, you're looking at a net loss of 10 million in 2019, a net loss of 6 million in 2018, and a net loss of 7 million in 2017. So the company has been running at a deficit for some time now.
There was, I heard net loss a lot, which isn't necessarily what you want to hear if you're an investor, correct?
Yeah, but again, you gotta, especially when you're thinking about financials, one of the first things you want to do is look to EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Get it, get it right. Okay. Say it in your head fast so you remember it. That's what's important, because when you look at that, you're netting out all of the non-cash expenses. So when I go in and I look at a company like this, especially a growth company, a company that is putting a lot of money into research and development. They're putting, in 2019, they put in almost $8 million into research and development out of their 23 million in revenue. So they're putting a sizable chunk of change towards research and development to try to make their product better. Because ultimately, without those statistics that you read earlier, they don't really have the basis to go to a market and say, hey, you should try this product, unless it actually works and it's actually useful and efficient and serves utility. But so by looking at EBITDA, you're gonna net out all the non-cash expenses, and you're gonna get a better picture of what their cash flow looks like. So as far as their cash flow, what do they do in 2019? They have an okay position in cash. They made cash in 2019. They lost cash in 2018. They made cash in 2017. So I think from what I see here, and to just kind of sum it up, is that they're doing an adequate job of managing their cash flow. And like I said, their high research and development costs are really what's driving their burning through this cash.
For sure. I think you make some fantastic points, and it's good to see at a specifically an early stage that they are so mindful of the cash flows of the company, right? There are some companies that some would say are a little bit reckless at just R&D, R&D, R&D. And I think when we at CA are looking whether we should add a company to the portfolio, we want to see relative responsibility with cash flow. So the market cap of Brainsway is $140 million. That's the valuation of it. And since they did about 22 million in sales last year, what is that about? Trading at 7 times sales, which is relatively reasonable. And for a company like this that is growing and smaller. And I think also one thing that is very fascinating is their gross profit margins. You want to touch on that a little bit, Mr. Money?
Yeah. So I don't have the number exactly, but like I mentioned earlier, they're turning 2019 a gross profit of $18 million.
Great. So we got 78% gross profit margins. That is a stupid high number in a good way, very reminiscent of software companies. And this is a medical device. So it's a very good time. Are you able to explain real quick what gross profit margins are?
Yeah, so gross profit margin is net sales or revenue minus your cost of goods sold, what it took you to input, make the product, and sell it. And then you divide that, you take the gross profit, revenues minus cost of goods sold, you divide that by the revenue to get your gross profit margin. And it's really just an indicator of how the company at a basic level is selling its widgets for a profit.
100%. That was sweet. So going back into the growth story for Brainsway, they see a significant opportunity. Obviously, worldwide, there's a lot of people that have depression, struggle with depression. So that's obviously one of their goals, specifically going into Japan. But I think there is a significant domestic market already, and on top of major depressive disorder, OCD, smoking addiction, the company's looking to get approval for people struggling with opioids, MS, multiple sclerosis, and also people that are trying to recover from strokes and to help them regain neurofunctionality. So I think, long story, very short, very high level, this is Brainsway. And Are you excited about the Brainsway opportunity, Mr. Money?
All right, time for the thesis.
Yeah, bring it, man.
I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to know anything about the brain or science for that matter. That was the class that I consistently did poorly in. I have a track record of being horrible at it. The numbers don't tell me a compelling story about their ability to lower their expenses. That is, they're turning a gross profit, but they've got selling and marketing expenses are significant, research and development as well. I would like to see them make money. And
Concept with a business, right? Making money.
Yeah, I would, sometimes it's something that seems simple, but companies, refuse to do it because, and that's the thing is you can't really blame all of them. Like if they've got a good product, which it really does seem like they do, it's worth it to put money into it and to make it better. So that it can be, like you said, like treat more illnesses. And so I think from that angle, there's a solid reason why they're putting more money into it. But as far as for me, I think for all of those reasons, I'm out. Shark Tank.
This is Shark Tank time on TV, so that makes sense, man. That's where your mind's at.
But what about you? I want to hear your thoughts, and I also want to hear you touch a little bit on telemedicine in general. I know that's another thematic growth section that we've seen grow in 2020. How do you see those two possibly crossing over?
Phenomenal question. Is it okay if I tackle the first one first?
Bro, do whatever you want.
No, it's our show. It's not just my show. But here's my thesis. Moment of truth, give me a drum roll. Will this be entered into the cruising altitude portfolio? Drum roll, please. It will not be. It definitely will not be. But there is a reason that we analyzed it. So my personal opinion on the company is, here's the good things that I see. I see an unbelievably powerful technology in a rapidly growing industry trading at a very low multiple. That has my ears or eyes, whatever it's supposed to be. 78% gross margins. That's serious gross margins. I see a huge opportunity, and they're not even in the first inning. They're not even in warm-ups. They're like when you're just leaving the garage at home, right? Like that's where they are in their story. And of course, we are not professional investment advisors, stock advisors, but this could be an opportunity where 0.5% of your portfolio, right? Where sometimes, of course, what are your portfolio goals? But a company that has, it's $100 million could easily become $1 billion company one day. And that's 10x if they get to a couple hundred million in sales. They're in the first inning, give them 10 years, who knows what can happen. But this is an industry that I want to be exposed to. And I'm happy with the amount I know about this company. I have listened to investor calls, like the CEO, Mr. Van Jacko, maybe Christopher. You can check that out. I like his vibe. I like his energy. But overall, I think also in Cruising Altitude's portfolio, we're trying to really educate our readers on a certain type of company that we want. You'll see probably, let's say there's 13 companies in the portfolio, 8 or 9 have very strong fundamentals, right? And that's something we really value. We want people looking at revenue, cash flow, net income, growth, dividends, things like that, because that's the easiest way to invest in many ways. And it's not rocket science. Our top performers are the boring picks, right? I don't think 250% of Viacom CBS is boring, but people would not consider that a sexy pick. But we're trying to maintain that kind of integrity onto the portfolio, and maybe if we add a stock to watch list, Brainsway would make it on that. That's something that we are considering doing, but that is my overall opinion. And I think I value, of course, your opinion from the financial side. That's Cruising Altitude's opinion, that this is a company that we're very intrigued with, but doesn't make the cut. And like you, Warren Buffett again, baseball again. Investing, you can wait for your pitch, right? But there's no 3 strikes, you're out. You can sit all day, and maybe you want to pick up a little bit of this, but I don't think you want this to be one of your big boys in the portfolio.